The meeting hall on Galactic Station Prime stretched for kilometers in every direction. Crystalline walls rose like frozen waterfalls, their surfaces glowing with soft blue light. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the massive space, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that no human throat could produce. At the very back of the hall, in the section reserved for minor species, sat the human delegation. 3 figures in simple gray uniforms occupied chairs that seemed too small for the grand surroundings. They had been sitting in the same spot for over 200 years, listening to decisions that affected their people without being asked for their opinion. Ambassador Soonja Kim watched the proceedings with calm eyes. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat bun and her hands rested quietly in her lap. To any observer, she looked like what the galaxy expected from humans: quiet, respectful, and harmless. The other species had learned to ignore the human section entirely. After all, what could such a primitive people contribute to galactic affairs? The Vorthak representative was speaking now, his crystalline body catching the light as he moved. His voice rang like wind chimes as he announced new mining restrictions. The primitive species in Sector 7 will reduce their extraction operations by 30%. This is necessary for galactic harmony. Sector 7 was human space. The restrictions would force 3 human colonies to shut down completely, leaving thousands of families without work or homes. Soonja Kim made a small note on her tablet and continued listening. She did not stand to object. She did not call for recognition from the speaker. She simply sat and recorded everything, just as humans had done for 3 centuries. The melody. Delegate spoke next, his gas-filled breathing apparatus creating a whistling sound with each word. The cargo vessels of certain younger species require additional inspection. For security purposes, these inspections may take several months. Everyone in the hall knew he meant human ships. The melody had been seizing human freight vessels for years, keeping their crews as workers in their gas giant factories. Soonja Kim made another note. Still, she said nothing. The Zephyrian hegemon rose from his golden throne at the center of the hall. His ancient face showed the wisdom of 8,000 years of rule. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The expansion of primitive species into unclaimed systems will be suspended indefinitely. Such species lack the wisdom to govern new worlds properly. This meant humans could never establish new colonies. Their population was growing, but they would be trapped in their current systems forever. Several alien representatives nodded in approval. It was a sensible decision, they thought. Primitive species needed guidance, not freedom. Soonja Kim closed her tablet and stood up. The 3 humans walked quietly out of the hall, just as they always did. No protests, no angry speeches, no dramatic gestures. The galaxy had come to expect this from humanity. They were useful workers and decent traders, but they knew their place in the galactic order. What the galaxy did not know was that Soonja Kim was not really an ambassador. She was a colonel in human intelligence, and every word spoken in that hall was being transmitted across space to a hidden fleet that had been preparing for this day for 200 years. Light years away, in the asteroid belt of the Kepler 442 system, Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the UES Dauntless. The ship looked nothing like the civilian vessels that represented humanity to the galaxy. Its hull was angular and dark, covered in sensors and weapon systems that no alien had ever seen. Its engines could push it to speeds that would shock the Council's military experts. Its armor could withstand weapons that the galaxy considered cutting edge. The Dauntless was not alone. 46 other warships drifted silently through the asteroid field, their stealth systems making them invisible to alien sensors. Each ship represented decades of secret development, built in hidden shipyards that the galaxy did not know existed. While the aliens thought humans were simple miners and farmers, human engineers had been solving the greatest puzzle of their time: how to build ships that could fight. Captain So-Young Kim stood beside the admiral, reading the intelligence reports that flooded in from across the galaxy. Her short black hair framed a face that showed no emotion, but her dark eyes burned with controlled anger. She had been reading these reports for 10 years, watching as alien species treated humanity like a resource to be managed rather than a people to be respected. The Vorthak seized another mining station, she reported in a calm voice. They killed 12 human workers who tried to resist. The Galactic Council called it an industrial accident. Admiral Park nodded slowly. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his early years as a ship engineer. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, building humanity's secret fleet while the galaxy believed humans were incapable of military thought. The Melody? He asked. 3 more ships taken, 47 crew members sent to work, in their atmospheric processors. The Galactic Council says it's temporary detention for security review. And the Zephyrians? Captain Kim's jaw tightened slightly. They've declared the Proxima system temporarily administered by their client species. 2 million humans now live under alien rule. The Council says it's for their own protection. Admiral Park turned to look out at his fleet. Each ship was crewed by humans who had volunteered for a mission they might not survive. They came from every human world, united by a simple belief that their species deserved respect, not just tolerance. They had trained in secret, learned to fight in silence, and prepared to prove that human weakness was not the same as human inability. Commander Dong-Hyun Lee approached with the final briefing materials. He was a young man with intelligent eyes and steady hands. As head of human intelligence, he had spent 15 years infiltrating alien communication networks and learning their military secrets. What he had discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The alien species have not fought a real war in over 1,000 years, he reported. Their military tactics are outdated, their strategies are predictable, and their commanders have no experience with actual combat. They've become comfortable with their superiority. What about their numbers? Admiral Park asked. Overwhelming, Commander Lee admitted. The Zephyrian hegemony alone can field 12,000 ships. The Vorthak Empire has 8,000. The Melody Confederation controls 1,500 systems. If they unite against us, we'll be outnumbered 50-1. Admiral Park smiled grimly. Numbers don't win wars, Commander. Preparation wins wars. Surprise wins wars. And determination wins wars. Across the fleet, captains prepared their crews for what was coming. Captain Ji-Hoon Choi was the youngest fleet commander at 32 years old. His destroyer Soul's Pride was smaller than most ships in the fleet, but it was fast and deadly. He had grown up hearing stories about the old days, when humans fought for everything they had. Now it was his generation's turn to fight. How long have we been preparing for this? His weapons officer asked. 200 years, Captain Choi replied. Ever since the first human diplomat sat in that hall and realized that being polite wasn't enough. The aliens don't respect weakness. They only understand strength. In the intelligence center of the BOI, hidden command station, teams of analysts worked around the clock to track alien fleet movements. They knew exactly where every major alien warship was located. They had studied alien tactics for decades, learning how their enemies thought and fought. Most importantly, they had identified the critical weaknesses in alien technology and strategy. The aliens had made one fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that because humans were peaceful, they were also harmless. They had confused diplomatic restraint with military inability. They had mistaken patience for submission. Admiral Park received the final signal from Soonja Kim as she left the council station. The galaxy had just voted to impose even harsher restrictions on human activity. They planned to reduce human space travel by 60% and limit human industrial activity to essential operations only. In effect, they were trying to turn humanity into a slave species without officially calling it slavery. The admiral opened a secure channel to all ships in the fleet. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke to the thousands of men and women who had spent their lives preparing for this moment. For 300 years, our species has tried to find a place in this galaxy through peace and cooperation. We followed their rules, respected their laws, and asked only for the right to exist as free people. Today they have shown us that they will never see us as equals. They will never respect our rights. They will never stop trying to control us. He paused, looking out at the stars where human colonies were waiting for news of their fate. Today, We stop asking for respect and start demanding it. Today, we stop being the silent species. Today, we show the galaxy what 3 centuries of human patience has been hiding. The Admiral's hand moved to the communication control. Across human space, hidden military bases received the same signal. Secret shipyards powered up their construction systems. Reserve fleets that had waited in dark space for decades began moving toward their targets. And 47 warships in the Kepler 442 system P. The Vorthak mining operation in the Proxima Tertius system had been running for 50 years without interruption. Massive crystal ships hung in space around the small planet, their living hulls growing slowly as they processed raw materials from the surface. The creatures that served as the Vorthak fleet were beautiful in their alien way, their crystalline bodies singing harmonic frequencies that could cut through solid rock. Captain Min Ho Jung watched the enemy formation through the sensors of his battlecruiser Busan Thunder. His ship hung motionless in the shadow of an asteroid, its stealth systems hiding it from Vorthak detection. For 6 hours, he had studied the alien ships, learning their patrol patterns and identifying their weaknesses. "Sir," his tactical officer reported quietly, "we've identified 17 vessels in the formation, 12 harvesters, 4 escorts, and 1 command ship." Captain Zhang nodded. The harvesters were enormous but slow, designed for processing materials rather than fighting. The escorts were smaller but carried the deadly harmonic weapons that made Vorthak ships dangerous to most enemies. The command ship was the prize, a massive crystal creature that served as both a living headquarters and a powerful weapon. "Any sign they've detected us?" he asked. "Negative, sir. Their sensors are focused on the planet's surface. They're not expecting any threats." That was the first advantage humans had discovered in their secret studies of alien warfare. The major species had not fought a real war in centuries. Their ships were designed for peacekeeping operations and minor conflicts with primitive species. They had grown comfortable with their superiority and stopped watching for serious threats. Captain Zhang opened a channel to his crew. The men and women of the Busan Thunder had trained for this moment for 15 years. They came from the industrial worlds of human space, where families had worked for generations building ships for alien masters. Now they would show the galaxy what humans could build when they worked for themselves. "Today we strike the first blow for human freedom," he said simply. "The galaxy thinks we're harmless miners and farmers. Let's show them what human miners and farmers can do when they're angry." The Busan Thunder began to move. Its engines produced no visible exhaust, and its hull absorbed sensor frequencies rather than reflecting them. To the Vorthak ships, it remained invisible until the moment Captain Zhang chose to reveal himself. At exactly 800 Galactic Standard Time, the human battlecruiser decloaked directly above the Vorthak command ship. The alien creature had seconds to register the impossible presence before human weapons spoke for the first time in galactic history. The railguns came first. Humans had abandoned energy weapons early in their secret military development, focusing instead on kinetic systems that alien shields were not designed to stop. Tungsten projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields punched through the command ship's crystalline hull like bullets through glass. The Vorthak creature screamed, its harmonic voice creating sound waves that shattered nearby asteroids. But the damage was already done. The railgun slugs had destroyed critical organs inside the living ship, and the beautiful crystal hull was cracking along stress lines that spread like spider webs. Before the Vorthak escorts could respond, the Busan Thunder launched its missile barrage. Human engineers had designed the weapons specifically to counter alien point defense systems. Instead of a few large missiles, the ship fired hundreds of smaller ones, each following a different flight path and programmed with adaptive targeting systems. The Vorthak harmonic weapons lashed out, their crystal songs slicing through space in deadly frequencies. Several missiles exploded as the sound waves disrupted their electronics, but humans had anticipated this. The remaining missiles continued their attack, overwhelming the alien defenses through sheer numbers. The escort ships tried to form a protective formation around their dying command vessel, but Captain Zhang had studied their tactics for years. He knew exactly how they would move, and where they would be vulnerable. The Busan Thunder's engines flared to life, pushing the ship into a high-speed attack run that brought it into close combat range. This was where human military thinking showed its greatest difference from alien strategy. The major species preferred to fight at long range, using superior technology to destroy enemies without risk. Humans had learned to embrace close combat, where their superior reflexes and tactical flexibility gave them advantages that technology could not match. The Busan Thunder's secondary weapons came online as it closed with the enemy formation. Plasma cannons designed for point defense work burned through crystal hulls at close range. Particle beams disrupted the harmonic frequencies that Vorthak ships used for both communication and weapons control, and when one escort ship tried to ram the human vessel, Captain Zhang used his ship's superior maneuverability to avoid the attack and respond with a devastating broadside that split the alien vessel in half. The battle lasted only 18 minutes. When it was over, the entire Vorthak mining operation was destroyed or fleeing. The crystal ships that had seemed so beautiful and deadly lay shattered in space, their harmonic songs silenced forever. Captain Yang's ship had taken minor damage to its hull plating, but the crew was celebrating humanity's first military victory in 300 years. But the real shock was still to come. As the last Vorthak ship limped away from the battle zone, Captain Yunjinam's assault carrier Inshin Victory decloaked near the planet's surface. The massive ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A mobile base designed to deploy ground forces in combat situations that alien species had not imagined for centuries. The launch bays opened, and humanity's secret weapon emerged: combat mechs. Each mech stood 20 meters tall and carried enough firepower to level a city block. But what made them truly terrifying was not their size or weapons. It was the fact that each one contained a human pilot who treated warfare as a personal challenge rather than a technological problem. The Vorthak had left ground forces on Proxima Tertius to continue mining operations while their fleet dealt with what they assumed was a single human ship. These ground forces were equipped for police work and labor management, not military combat. They had energy weapons designed to stun unruly workers in vehicles built for transportation rather than fighting. The human mechs landed like falling stars, their impact craters smoking in the thin atmosphere. Pilot after pilot climbed out of their crash pods and activated their machines, bringing 20 meters of human engineering and determination to bear against an enemy that had never faced anything like them. Sergeant Eugene Park piloted the lead mech, a heavy assault unit called Iron Wolf. She had grown up on a mining world where Vorthak overseers treated human workers like tools rather than people. Now she had the chance to show them what human tools could do when they decided to fight back. The Vorthak ground forces tried to organize a defense, but their formations were designed for controlling civilians, not fighting an enemy that was shooting back. Their energy weapons could stun humans, but they barely scratched the armor of the combat mechs. Their vehicles were fast and efficient, but they had no weapons capable of stopping a determined mech assault. Sergeant Park's mech strode through the Vorthak defensive lines like a giant walking through a children's playground. Her weapon systems targeted alien vehicles and defensive positions with precision that came from years of training and a lifetime of anger. Each shot was carefully aimed, each movement calculated for maximum effect. The other mechs spread out across the battlefield, their pilots working together with the kind of coordination that only came from extensive practice. They had trained in secret for 15 years, learning to fight as a team while the galaxy believed humans were incapable of military cooperation. The Vorthak commander on the surface tried to surrender after only 20 minutes of combat. His harmonic voice created the sounds that meant peace and submission in the galactic standard. But Sergeant Park had grown up listening to Vorthak overseers giving orders to human workers, and she had no interest in accepting surrender from beings who had never shown mercy to her people. The battle for Proxima Tertius ended with complete human victory. Every Vorthak installation on the planet was destroyed or captured. The alien mining equipment that had extracted wealth from human worlds for decades was turned into scrap metal, and the Vorthak workers who had supervised human slaves found themselves prisoners of the people they had once controlled. News of the battle spread across the galaxy, faster than the speed of light through quantum communication networks. For the First time in 3 centuries, the galactic news services were reporting on human military action, and what they reported was impossible to believe. The harmless mining species had built warships that could defeat crystal vessels in space combat. The peaceful farmers had developed ground forces that could overwhelm experienced alien troops. The silent diplomats had been hiding a military capability that no one had suspected existed. But the real shock came when the news analysts began to study the battle recordings. The human ships and mechs were not primitive copies of alien technology. They were original designs that showed a completely different approach to warfare. Where aliens relied on superior technology and overwhelming force, humans had. The Melody Confederation had ruled the gas giants of the Outer Rim for 4,000 years. Their massive atmospheric cities floated in the crushing depths of methane storms, protected by technology that had turned weather itself into a weapon. When news of the Vorthak defeat reached their council chambers, the reaction was not fear but anger. High Counselor Vex 9 inflated his breathing sacs to their full size, a sign of supreme confidence among his people. His translucent body glowed, with bioluminescent patterns that expressed his contempt for the upstart humans. Around him, the other council members whistled their agreement through their breathing apparatus. A single victory means nothing, Vex 9 declared, his voice creating harmonic overtones in the methane atmosphere. The crystal singers were always weak in close combat, but no species can fight us in our own domain. The atmospheric depths are our kingdom. The Melody had good reason for their confidence. Their ships were designed to operate in the crushing pressure and toxic atmosphere of gas giants. Their weapons could turn atmospheric storms into guided missiles. Their pilots had evolved in 3-dimensional combat environments that no solid world species could match. For 4 millennia, no enemy had successfully challenged them in atmospheric warfare. But the Melody made the same mistake as the Vorthak. They assumed that humans would fight like other alien species, using conventional tactics and technology. They did not know that humans had spent 2 centuries studying every aspect of galactic warfare, including the specialized combat techniques that each species considered unbeatable. Captain Tae-Young-Oh stood on the bridge of the atmospheric combat ship Daegu Storm as it approached the methane clouds of Titan II. His vessel looked nothing like the sleek ships that most humans associated with space warfare. It was built like an atmospheric fighter from ancient Earth, with swept wings and air-breathing engines that could operate in a variety of gas mixtures. Atmospheric entry in 30 seconds, his pilot reported. Lieutenant Bo-Ra Jung had grown up on the gas mining platforms that orbited Jupiter, learning to fly in atmospheric conditions that would kill most pilots. She had volunteered for the atmospheric combat program because she wanted to prove that humans could master any environment where they were willing to fight. Melody fleet positions? Captain O asked. 3 battle fleets moving to intercept, approximately 200 ships total. They're using standard atmospheric warfare formations, vertical assault columns with Storm Rider escorts. Captain O smiled grimly. The Melody were doing exactly what human intelligence had predicted. They were fighting the same way they had fought for thousands of years, using tactics that worked against conventional enemies. But humans were not a conventional enemy. The Daegu Storm entered Titan II's atmosphere at high speed, its hull heating up as it cut through layers of methane and hydrogen. The ship's engines automatically adjusted to the changing atmospheric conditions, maintaining thrust and maneuverability, even in the crushing depths where pressure could destroy unprotected vessels in seconds. Behind the lead ship, 19 other human atmospheric fighters followed in loose formation. Each pilot was a volunteer from the gas mining colonies, trained in combat techniques that no alien species had ever developed. They had learned to fight in storms that could tear apart mountains, using the chaotic atmospheric conditions as both weapon and shield. The first Melody attack came as expected. Storm Rider ships emerged from a massive atmospheric disturbance, their weapon systems charging the surrounding gases with electrical energy that could be directed at enemy targets. Lightning bolts hundreds of kilometers long reached out toward the human formation, carrying enough power to vaporize any normal spacecraft. But Lieutenant Jung was not flying a normal spacecraft. She threw the Daegu Storm into a spiraling dive that took it through 3 different atmospheric layers in 15 seconds. The lightning bolts passed through empty space where the ship had been, their electrical energy dissipating harmlessly in the methane clouds. Melody pilots can't match that kind of maneuvering, Captain O observed as he watched the enemy formation struggle to track their movements. They're used to fighting in stable atmospheric conditions. They've never faced pilots who treat storms as navigation aids. The human ships split up, each pilot choosing their own approach to the enemy formation. This was another advantage that came from human military philosophy. Where alien species preferred coordinated mass attacks, humans had learned to fight as individuals who could adapt to changing conditions without waiting for orders from higher command. Pilot Sung-Ho Kim took his fighter Busan Lightning into the heart of an electrical storm, using the chaotic energy patterns to mask his approach to a Melody battlecruiser. The alien ship was trying to use its storm control systems to create a protective barrier of lightning around itself. But Kim had grown up flying through Jupiter's Great Red Spot, and he knew how to read atmospheric currents that most pilots could not even see. His ship emerged from the storm directly underneath the Melody vessel, climbing through layers of compressed gas at speeds that would have torn apart a less maneuverable craft. The human weapon systems locked onto the alien ship's atmospheric processors, the organs that allowed Melody vessels to extract power from gas giant atmospheres. The missiles that Kim fired were specifically designed for atmospheric combat. Instead of explosive warheads, they carried chemical payloads that would disrupt the atmospheric processing systems that Melody ships needed to survive. When they struck their target, the alien vessel's power systems began to fail, leaving it helpless in the crushing atmospheric pressure. Across the battlefield, other human pilots were demonstrating combat techniques that the Melody had never imagined possible. They used atmospheric pressure waves as weapons, creating sonic booms that could damage enemy ships. They turned electrical storms into guided missiles, redirecting lightning strikes with precisely placed charges. And when conventional weapons failed, they used their ships themselves as kinetic weapons, ramming enemy vessels at speeds that turned both craft into expanding clouds of superheated gas. The Melody formation began to break apart as their commanders realized they were facing an enemy that fought unlike anything in their experience. Their storm control systems were designed to dominate atmospheric conditions, but the humans were using those same conditions against them. Their lightning weapons were deadly in normal combat, but useless against pilots who could predict and avoid electrical attacks by reading atmospheric patterns. High Counselor Vex 9 watched the battle from his command ship deep in Titan II's atmosphere. His bioluminescent patterns had changed from confidence to shock as he saw his fleet being systematically destroyed by a handful of human fighters. The impossible was happening. Solid world creatures were defeating gas world natives in atmospheric combat. How are they doing this? He demanded from his tactical officers. No solid world species has ever mastered atmospheric warfare. The answer came from his intelligence officer, whose patterns showed deep confusion. They're not fighting like solid world species, High Counselor. They're using tactics we've never seen before. Their ships move through atmospheric layers like they were born in gas giant environments. Their pilots seem to predict our weapons before we fire them. What the Melody did not understand was that humans had spent 50 years studying atmospheric combat techniques from every known species. But instead of copying alien methods, human engineers had developed their own approach based on the experiences of pilots who had grown up working in the most dangerous atmospheric conditions in human space. The gas mining platforms around Jupiter, Saturn, and other human gas giants were not just industrial facilities. They were training grounds where human pilots learned to fly in conditions that would challenge the best alien atmospheric fighters. The storms that threatened mining operations became practice targets for pilots who were secretly preparing for war. Captain O's ship emerged from a methane storm directly behind the Melody command vessel. The alien ship was massive, its living hull adapted for life in the deepest atmospheric layers, but its size made it slow, and its commanders were used to fighting enemies who could not match their atmospheric maneuverability. The Daegu Storm's weapon systems locked onto the command ship's atmospheric control centers. These were the organs that allowed the vessel to maintain position in the crushing depths of the gas giant's atmosphere. If they were damaged, the ship would either be crushed by atmospheric pressure or blown into space by rising gas currents. Target locked, his weapons officer reported, firing atmospheric disruption charges. The human weapons struck with perfect precision. Instead of trying to destroy the massive alien ship, they disrupted its ability to control its position in the atmosphere. The Melody command vessel began to rise uncontrollably, its crew helpless as atmospheric currents carried them toward the thinner upper layers where their ship could not survive. The battle for Titan II ended with complete human victory. Of the 200 Melody ships that had entered the combat zone, fewer than 50 escaped. The survivors fled deep into the gas giant's core, abandoning their positions and leaving human forces in control of the entire atmospheric zone. But the real shock came when Galactic Intelligence, the largest war fleet in galactic history, stretched across 3 solar systems as it prepared for the final assault on human space. 12,000 ships from 37 different species had answered the Zephyrian hegemon's call to arms. Crystal, vessels that sang harmonic death songs, floated alongside living ships that could regenerate battle damage. Ancient dreadnoughts powered by stellar cores shared formation space with swarms of fighter craft that moved like schools of deadly fish. Hegemon Prime Zethus, the Eternal, stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and felt the weight of 8,000 years of galactic rule. His golden eyes surveyed tactical displays that showed the overwhelming force he had assembled. No species in galactic history had ever faced such a concentration of military power and survived. Final fleet composition, he asked his tactical coordinator. 12,800 vessels total, Admiral Korth 12 reported. 4,000 heavy combat ships, 6,000 support vessels, and 2,800 specialized assault craft. We have representatives from every major military tradition in the galaxy. The hegemon nodded slowly. The humans had surprised the galaxy with their initial victories, but those had been against isolated forces fighting on unfavorable terms. This time, there would be no surprises, no tactical advantages, no room for the unconventional thinking that had given humanity its early successes. This would be a straightforward test of military power, and the humans were outnumbered 60-1. Intelligence estimates of human fleet strength? He asked. No more than 200 ships, the Admiral replied. Our surveillance networks have identified their main bases and tracked their vessel movements. They're concentrated in the Sol system, apparently making a final stand around their homeworld. This was exactly what Zephyrian strategic doctrine predicted. Primitive species always retreated to their homeworld when faced with overwhelming force, hoping to use defensive advantages to prolong their resistance. It was a predictable response that made the final assault easier to plan. What the aliens did not know was that every piece of intelligence they had gathered about human fleet positions was carefully crafted misinformation. The 200 ships they had detected were real, but they were not the main human battle fleet. They were a carefully prepared trap designed to draw the alien armada into a killing ground where human advantages in tactical thinking and technological innovation could overcome raw numbers. Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Dauntless, as it drifted silently in the outer reaches of the Sol system. Around him, the real human battle fleet waited in positions that no alien scout had detected. 200 ships was indeed a close estimate of human strength, but they were not the obsolete mining vessels and converted freighters that alien intelligence believed them to be. Enemy fleet movement? He asked Captain So-Young Kim, who served as his tactical coordinator. They're following the predicted approach routes, she reported. 3 main battle groups converging on Earth from different vectors. They're using standard Zephyrian doctrine, overwhelming force applied simultaneously to prevent any chance of escape. Admiral Park smiled grimly. The aliens were fighting exactly as humans had expected them to fight. 3 centuries of careful study had taught human strategists that galactic military doctrine had become rigid and predictable. The major species had not fought a real war in so long that their tactics had fossilized into standard procedures that could be anticipated and countered. Signal to all ships, he said quietly. Prepare for Operation Solar Strike. Remember, we only get one chance to prove that human determination is stronger than alien numbers. Across the fleet, captains, received their final orders, and prepared their crews for the battle that would determine humanity's fate. They knew they were outnumbered by impossible odds, but they also knew something that the aliens did not understand. Humans had been preparing for this exact battle for 200 years. The first phase of the battle began when the Zephyrian advance scouts entered the outer Sol system. They detected the human defensive fleet exactly where their intelligence had predicted it would be, deployed in a traditional defensive formation around Earth. What they did not detect were the human stealth ships that had been tracking their movements for weeks. Captain Jaewon Shin commanded the reconnaissance destroyer Sol's Ghost as it shadowed the alien advance forces. His ship was completely invisible to enemy sensors using stealth technology that human scientists had developed specifically to counter every known alien detection system. As the alien scouts reported their findings back to the main fleet, Captain Shin was gathering intelligence that would be crucial to the coming battle. Alien formation analysis complete, his sensor officer reported. They're using Hegemony Standard Battle Formation 7. Heavy ships in the center, escorts on the flanks, command vessels in protected positions. No variation from the textbook. This was the advantage that human military thinking provided. Where alien commanders followed established doctrine, human strategists had learned to think creatively about tactical problems. They knew exactly how. The aliens would deploy their forces because galactic military doctrine had not changed in centuries. The main alien fleet entered the Sol system in 3 massive waves, their approach calculated to overwhelm human defenses through sheer firepower. The lead elements began their assault on the human defensive positions around Earth, expecting to crush any resistance within hours. What they found instead was the first surprise in what would become known as the Battle of Solar Reach. The human ships they attacked were not crewed vessels at all. They were automated decoys, designed to fool alien sensors and waste enemy ammunition. While the aliens spent precious time and energy destroying empty hulls, the real human fleet was moving into position for a counterattack that would shock the galaxy. Admiral Park's battle plan was based on a simple principle that alien commanders had forgotten. The side that chooses when and where to fight has an enormous advantage over the side that merely reacts to enemy actions. While the aliens were attacking phantom targets, human ships were positioning themselves to strike at the points where the enemy formation was weakest. Phase 2. Initiation in 60 seconds, Captain Kim announced. All ships report ready. The real Battle of Solar Reach began when 200 human warships decloaked simultaneously throughout the alien formation. They had used the chaos of the initial assault to position themselves at close range to critical enemy vessels, turning the aliens' own attack momentum against them. Captain Bo Young Lee commanded the heavy cruiser Gwangju Defiant as it emerged. From stealth directly alongside a Zephyrian battlecruiser, the alien ship was 3 times larger and carried weapons that could destroy planets, but it had never been designed to fight an enemy at knife fighting range. All weapons fire, Captain Lee ordered. The human ship's railguns spoke first, sending tungsten projectiles through the alien vessel's shields and hull at velocities that turned them into plasma on impact. The Zephyrian ship's energy weapons were powerful but slow to track targets at close range. By the time its gun crews could respond, the Gwangju Defiant had already crippled its main power systems. Across the battle zone, similar engagements were taking place as human ships demonstrated the tactical advantages that came from choosing their own engagement range. The aliens had superior weapons and stronger shields, but those advantages meant nothing when human ships could get close enough to attack weak points with precision fire. But the real shock came when human boarding operations began. Captain Chang Ho. Park commanded the assault ship Ulsan Fury as it latched onto the hull of a Melody atmospheric processor. The alien vessel was designed to operate in the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres, making its hull incredibly strong. But human engineers had studied its construction for decades and knew exactly where to place cutting charges for maximum effect. Breach team ready, Sergeant Major Hae Jin Nam reported. Her Marines were equipped with armor that could operate in any environment, from hard vacuum to crushing atmospheric pressure. They had trained for boarding operations that alien military doctrine considered impossible. Begin assault, Captain Park ordered. The human Marines cut through the alien hull and began fighting their way through corridors that had never been designed for combat. The Melody crew had no experience with close-quarters battle, and their weapons were optimized for atmospheric warfare rather than shipboard fighting. They found themselves facing enemies who treated hand-to-hand combat as a normal part of military operations. What followed was a masterclass in human adaptability. The Marines had studied the layout of Melody ships and knew how to navigate their complex internal structures. They used the ship's own atmospheric systems against its crew, introducing chemical agents that disrupted Melody breathing while having no effect on humans in sealed armor. Within 30 minutes, they had captured the entire vessel and turned its weapons against the alien fleet. The psychological impact of human boarding tactics was even greater than their military effectiveness. The major galactic species had not experienced infantry combat in millennia. The idea of enemy soldiers fighting their way through their ships was so alien to their military thinking. 6 months after the Battle of Solar Reach, the galaxy was a very different place. The crystalline halls of Galactic Station Prime still gleamed with their ancient beauty, but the voices that filled them now carried a tension that had not existed for millennia. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered for emergency sessions that would have been unthinkable before humanity's rise to power. Ambassador Soon-Ja Kim walked through corridors that had once seen her as a minor functionary from an insignificant species. Now alien delegates stepped aside as she passed, their various forms of communication carrying undertones of respect, fear, and curiosity. The human delegation no longer sat in the back section reserved for primitive species. They had been given seats in the inner circle, where only the most powerful civilizations were represented. The transformation had not come easily. In the weeks following humanity's victory, dozens of species had attempted to challenge the new order. Some tried military action, sending fleets to test human defenses. Others attempted economic warfare, organizing trade boycotts against human worlds. A few had even tried diplomatic isolation, refusing to recognize humanity's new status. All of these efforts had failed because they were based on the old assumption that humans were a single-world species with limited resources and influence. What the galaxy discovered was that 3 centuries of apparent weakness had hidden a network of colonies, allies, and trading partners that stretched across dozens of sectors. Captain So-Young Kim stood on the observation deck of New Busan Station, humanity's first forward operating base in former Zephyrian territory. The massive structure was both a military installation and a symbol of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from a dozen different species docking at human facilities, their crews eager to establish relationships with the galaxy's newest major power. "Trade volume reports," she requested from her aide, Lieutenant Dongwoo Park. "Up 400% from pre-war levels," he replied, consulting his data tablet. "The Altarian Republic has signed exclusive mining rights agreements for 3 systems. The Bendari Collective is requesting human military advisors for their border conflicts. And the Thessian Commonwealth wants to license our atmospheric combat technology." This was perhaps the most surprising aspect of humanity's victory. Instead of seeking revenge against the species that had oppressed them, humans had offered partnership to anyone willing to treat them as equals. The galaxy had expected the new dominant species to behave like the old ones, imposing their will through force and demanding tribute from weaker civilizations. Instead, humans had done something unprecedented. They had created a power structure based on mutual benefit rather than domination. Dr. Jin A. Lee supervised the joint scientific expedition that was preparing to depart from New Busan Station. The team included researchers from 17 different species, working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old galactic order, where the Zephyrian hegemony had restricted scientific cooperation to maintain their technological advantages. Humans encouraged knowledge sharing that benefited everyone involved. "The atmospheric engineering project is ready for field testing," she reported to Captain Kim. "We're combining human atmospheric control techniques with Melody gas processing technology and Vorthak harmonic manipulation. The result should be terraforming capabilities that surpass anything previously achieved." This collaboration was changing more than just galactic politics. It was revolutionizing the way species thought about technological development. The old system had relied on each civilization hoarding their discoveries to maintain competitive advantages. The new human approach shared innovations freely, creating rapid advancement that benefited all participants. But the most significant changes were happening in the realm of exploration and expansion. Captain Ji-hoon Choi commanded the mixed-species exploration vessel, Soul's Journey, as it prepared for humanity's most ambitious project yet, the first expedition beyond the galactic rim. For 8,000 years, the major civilizations had accepted the edge of known space as a natural boundary. The Zephyrian hegemony had discouraged exploration beyond established territories, preferring to consolidate control over existing systems rather than risk the unknown. Humans brought a different philosophy to galactic civilization. Where aliens saw boundaries, humans saw frontiers. Where others saw risks, humans saw opportunities. And where the old order had imposed limits on growth and exploration, the new partnership encouraged expansion into uncharted territories. Final crew manifest. Captain Choi requested from his first officer, Commander Yoon Seo Nam, 57 beings from 23 species. She reported, each volunteer has been trained in human exploration protocols and xenobiological contact procedures. They're as ready as we can make them for whatever we find out there. The expedition represented everything that had changed about galactic civilization. Species that had barely spoken to each other under the hegemony were now working together on projects that would reshape their understanding of the universe. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic politics for millennia were being replaced by partnerships based on capability and cooperation, rather than age and tradition. Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo Park, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Forces, oversaw the integration of captured alien technology with human engineering principles. The secret shipyards that had once hidden humanity's military preparation were now open facilities where human and alien engineers worked side by side to develop vessels that combined the best aspects of every known technology. Production reports from all facilities, he requested from his aide. The joint shipbuilding program is exceeding all projections, Admiral Sungmin Kwan reported. We're producing vessels that are 40% more efficient than previous human designs and 60% more effective than standard alien configurations. More importantly, we're training alien engineers in human construction techniques while learning their technological secrets. This technological exchange was creating capabilities that no single species could have achieved alone. Human kinetic weapons combined with Vorthak harmonic focusing created devastating new weapon systems. Melody atmospheric processing techniques enhanced with human engineering produced ships that could operate in previously impossible environments. And Zephyrian energy manipulation methods guided by human tactical thinking resulted in defensive systems that had revolutionized space combat. But perhaps the most important change was in the way the galaxy thought about conflict and cooperation. Director Yoo-jin Park's intelligence networks had evolved from secret spy operations into an open, information-sharing system that prevented conflicts before they could develop into wars. The same human intelligence capabilities that had enabled their military victory were now being used to identify potential problems and solve them through negotiation rather than force. Threat analysis for the coming month, Admiral Park requested. 3. Minor territorial disputes, 2 trade disagreements, and 1 technological patent conflict, Director Park reported. All are being addressed through the new mediation protocols. No military intervention anticipated. This was the galaxy that humanity was creating. One where conflicts were resolved through discussion rather than destruction, where technological advancement benefited everyone rather than just the strongest, and where exploration and expansion were encouraged rather than restricted. The old galactic order had been based on the assumption that some species were naturally superior to others, and that peace could only be maintained through the dominance of the strongest civilizations. The new order that humans were building was founded on a different principle, that every species had something valuable to contribute, and that cooperation produced better results than competition. Ambassador Soon-ja Kim stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council as they prepared to vote on the most significant constitutional change in galactic history. The ancient charter that had given absolute authority to the eldest species was being replaced by a new system that distributed power based on contribution rather than age. "The proposal before us today," she said in a voice that carried across the vast chamber, "will establish a government based on what each species brings to our common future, rather than what they accomplished in the distant past. This is not about human dominance. This is about creating a galaxy where every voice can be heard and every civilization can contribute to our shared prosperity." The vote was closer than some had expected, but the result was clear. The age of absolute rule by ancient civilizations was ending. The age of partnership and cooperation was beginning. As the results were announced, representatives from across the galaxy began to understand what humanity had really accomplished. They had not simply defeated the old order through military force. They had replaced it with something better, creating a civilization based on principles that encouraged growth, exploration, and innovation, rather than stagnation and control. Captain Choi's exploration vessel departed from New Busan Station 3 days later, carrying the hopes and dreams of dozens of species toward the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim. As the Soul's journey disappeared into